When Indian migrants move to the United States, they often face an unexpected challenge: mockery and embarrassment over their English accent. Despite being really fluent in the language, many Indians are judged or they are simply mocked because their pronunciation and tone sounds different from what Americans are used to. This bias raises an important question. If Americans were forced to speak Hindi, wouldn't they also have a thick accent? Wouldn't Indians still encourage and appreciate their efforts rather than mocking them? Then why can't Americans do the same and make Indians feel more welcomed? An accent is simply the way that somebody pronounces words based on their native language and linguistic patterns they grew up with. Every language has its very unique sound, and when people learn a second language, they naturally carry on the speech patterns of their first language. And this is why an Indian speaking English sounds really different from an American speaking English. Just as Americans speaking Hindi would sound different from an Indian speaking Hindi. In fact, research shows that when people hear a foreign accent, their brain takes a few extra milliseconds to process the unfamiliar sound. This slight delay can make the speech seem harder to understand, even if the words are correct. A 2010 study from the University of Chicago found that people are more likely to distrust information when it is spoken in a foreign accent, not because of a content, but simply because their brains struggle to process it easily. Now, this unconscious bias plays a huge role in why Americans often react negatively to Indian accents. English is the second or even third language for most Indians. But India has one of the largest English-speaking population in the world. Around 125 million Indians speak English, and it is widely used in education, business, and the government. However, Indian English has evolved with its own pronunciation rule, influenced by native Indian languages like Hindi, Tamil, Bengali, and Punjabi. English also follows a rhythmic pattern that differs from American English, making it sounds really fast or musical to American ears, like the way I speak. These differences are not mistakes, just variation in pronunciations. Interestingly, Indians still use correct grammar, vocabulary, and sentence structure. But instead of recognizing this, many Americans mock Indian English, reinforcing a false idea that having an accent means that somebody is less intelligent or proficient in English. Now you imagine, if an American were required to live in India and speak Hindi every single day, would they sound exactly like a native Hindi speaker? Well, definitely not. Hindi has sounds that do not exist in English. That is th and dh, making it really difficult for an American to pronounce these words correctly. You try it at home. Americans would likely speak Hindi with their own English style, just as Indians speak English with their own native linguistic influences. Despite their heavy accent, Indians would likely appreciate their effort and encourage them rather than mocking them. In fact, whenever an American or British person tries to speak in Hindi, even with broken grammar and heavy accent, Indians respond with admiration and encouragement. Videos of foreigners speaking Hindi often goes viral in India, with people praising them for making an effort. But when the roles are reversed, many Americans fail to show the same patience and appreciation. Instead, they often mock Indian migrants for their accent, making them feel unwelcomed in the country that they are trying to adapt to. For many Indian immigrants in the US, accent bias is more than just an occasional joke. It has real-life consequences. Studies show that people with foreign accents face fewer job opportunity, lower wages, and discrimination in everyday life. A 2019 study by the University of North Texas found that applicants with non-American accent were 16% less likely to be hired, even if their qualification were the same. Research from Harvard Business School indicates that people with accent earn 10 to 20% lesser than native speakers, regardless of their skill level. Many Indians report being ignored in the stores, receiving poor customer service, or being mocked in social setting simply because of their accent. This kind of treatment can make immigrants feel isolated, self-conscious, and even ashamed of their identity. Instead of being welcomed for their skills and contribution, they are made to feel like an outsider simply because they sound different. It's time for Americans to recognize their own biases and make an effort to be more understanding. Language is about communication, and as long as somebody is understanding, their accent should not matter. Indians in the US are already putting a lot of effort to speak English fluently. So, why can't Americans put in effort to listen with patience and respect? If an American were to speak in Hindi with an accent, they would expect Indians to support and encourage them, right? It's only fair that Indian migrants receive the same courtesy when speaking English. A little empathy, patience, and open mindedness can go a long way in making immigrants feel truly at home in American society.